Hello and welcome. In this presentation, I'll be talking about productivity and how it relates to a process view of supply chain management. Now, productivity is a very important topic within operations and supply chain management. And at a very high level, it refers to the value of outputs divided by the value of input resources that are necessary to produce the output. So we could view this productivity from individual processes that comprise supply chain and understand how each of these processes have been in terms of the productivity. Now, various organizations have been engaged and are engaged in productivity improvement efforts. And many times these efforts are dictated by what management thinks productivity is all about. For example, the management of an organization can think about improving productivity by keeping the inputs constant but increasing the output. So they could think about different process improvement initiatives that can help in removing much of the waste that is there in the inputs and increasing outputs in terms of the number of people remaining constant, number of machines remaining constant, but the outputs are being generated by reducing the waste in time that might be there. A different approach might be to reduce inputs and keep the output the same. So that could be still increasing productivity. So many of the layoffs that could happen for employees where you're reducing the labor resource would increase productivity. And that could be another way in which management can steer the productivity improvement in a certain direction. Another way in which management plays an important role in measuring and improving productivity is in how it defines the productivity itself. So, for example, on one end, an organization can focus on all the labor inputs and how the organization is making outputs using that labor. So the focus now is on labor productivity, whereas a different company, which perhaps could be capital intensive, could be thinking of it more in terms of, let's say, the machine inputs, which is necessary to produce certain output and how effective they are in doing so. So there, the focus is now on machine productivity as against labor productivity. There could also be multi-factor productivity where you consider multiple types of factors that are necessary to create an output. So it's important to keep in mind that management can think about productivity in different ways, measure it in different ways, and conceptualize it in different ways. So we will see an example, a simple example, to just illustrate the point of different types of productivity which one can think about. So we'll use this example of a certain university where student tuition at this university is $150 per semester credit hour. The state supplements the school revenue by $100 per semester credit hour. So they get some extra money from the state on top of what students are paying. Average class size for a typical 3 credit course is 50 students. Labor costs are $4,000 per class. Material costs are $20 per student per class, and overhead costs are $25,000 per class. So we have several inputs in the form of labor, material, and overhead. The questions that we have to answer here are, what is the multi-factor productivity ratio for this course process here? And if instructors work an average of 14 hours per week for 16 weeks, for each 3 credit class of 50 students, what is the labor productivity ratio? So you see that we are looking at multi-factor in part A and only labor productivity in part B. So we will see what each of these mean. Now, multi-factor productivity is the ratio of the value of output to the value of input resources of different types. So the value of output in this case would be in terms of the tuition revenue that the university gets. So you have 50 students in a class. There are 3 credit hours per student. So there will be 150, which is the total credit hours per class. So then you multiply that with how much you are earning through tuition and state support per credit hour. So $150 is the tuition per credit hour and $100 is the state support per credit hour. So you multiply 50 students per class, 3 credit hours per student, and then $250 per credit hour. which gives you $37,500 per class as the value of output. Now, value of inputs is the sum of different factors that are necessary to create a course within the class. So you have labor, you have materials, and overhead. And the information that is provided to us gives us the labor cost as $4,000. Material cost is at $20 per student, and there are 50 students in a class. So 20 times 50 will be the total material cost. And then overhead is $25,000. So when we add them together, the value of inputs in this problem will be $30,000 per class. So we take the formula for productivity, which is output divided by inputs, and output is $37,500 per class, and input is $30,000 per class. So both of them are in dollar terms. So when we divide the two, we get a ratio, which is 1.25. So essentially, for every dollar that is invested in the class, you're getting $1.25 as output for this particular class that we have in this example. Part B of this problem is the labor productivity, and that is defined as the ratio of the value of output to only the labor hours as inputs. So the value of output remains the same, which is $37,500 per class. And the labor hours, that is the input that we need, is something which we need to calculate. We've been given that these instructors will be working 14 hours per week, and there are 16 weeks per class. So in total, there are 224 hours per class, right? So we take the output, which is $37,500 per class, divided by the labor input, which is 224 hours per class, and obtain $167.41 per hour. So you see that we are now looking at dollars per hour, a different measure than multi-factor productivity. So we could have the productivity measures in the form of dollars per hour, dollars per labor hour, dollars per machine hour, could be outputs per hour. So there are different ways in which it could be defined based on the management thoughts on what productivity means for the organization. So overall, we have discussed in this presentation what productivity means, what the role of management is in defining and measuring it. And we took an example of a university understanding multi-factor productivity and labor productivity. Thank you.